They came to my hallway like it was their right to cross at a man in a blue blazer carrying a key fob that clicked like it belonged to a kingdom, and a woman behind him whose smile never reached her eyes. I remember the click because it sounded small and ordinary things have a way of becoming the loudest things when you're the only one paying attention. That click is what made me move. My name is Marcus Hale. I work in compliance for a small software firm. Numbers, logs, policies, the kind of work that teaches you that systems either tell the truth or they lie very badly. My sister's house sits 2 blocks off Maple in a neighborhood called Holloway Green, a place of identical porches and carefully trimmed hedges where people fight over mailbox designs like they're dueling for a country seat. Her daughter, Naomi, had turned 16 that spring and still left her seashell curtain on the bathroom window because it made her feel like the ocean's small comforts, you know? I'll come back to that curtain. The woman with the empty smile was Marjorie Blake, president of the Holloway Homeowners Association. She'd been on that board so long it had started to look like an armor she wore to every meeting. The man with the fob was one of the vendor guys they hired last month, keyless entry rollout. The flyer said, in tidy font. The first thing Marjorie did was reach for the bathroom door while Naomi was inside, and I saw how quick the air went out of my chest. It wasn't violent, it was that administrative kind of intrusion, the kind that says, I can. I will. That's Act 1, the conflict that wakes you. She didn't have a warrant. There was no emergency. She had a master fob and an attitude that meant she thought her membership card was permission to everything. Naomi screamed when the handle turned a half-second sound that made everyone's blood equalize, and Marjorie stepped back with that thin smile. Inspection, she said, as if that one word could hold a warrant. My sister, Anna, came into the hall like she'd been waiting to see which of her nerves would break first. I remember thinking, this is petty. And then, this is dangerous. I didn't storm the clubhouse or tweet the whole thing. I did what I do. I paid attention. I listened to the phrasing, to the timing, to the way Marjorie said inspection like a lecture. I watched the vendor guy pocket the fob. I stood in my sister's kitchen and watched Naomi draw her hands around a mug as if sitting on the porch would keep storms away. That night, I opened my laptop and I started a timeline. Act 2 is the slow, methodical pushback, the kind of fight that wears people down or clears their minds. I went to the next HOA meeting pretending to be the neighbor who only cared about trash pickup. I sat in the back, took notes, and watched Marjorie stand and explain the master access policy like it was a public service. For safety, she said. For convenience. There were flyers with a smiling logo and bullet points nobody read because they looked like proper nouns. I asked one small thing, audit trails. Where does the log live? Who reviews access? The room went warm and then colder, like the air conditioning had stopped in the middle of a sentence. We keep records, Marjorie said. It's managed by the vendor. I don't bother people with industry jargon. I don't need to. I made analogies. Doors that don't tell their story are doors that lie. It's simple, and simple things are easy to test. I asked the vendor for access reports under the guise of a concerned resident. They sent a spreadsheet with dates and times and a column called Master Key Used that had more blanks than answers. I found a printed summary in the recycling bin behind the clubhouse, half crumpled, like someone had been careless in haste. That paper had a timestamp that didn't match their spreadsheet. That misalignment is what gives you a thread pull it. It was quiet, and it felt wrong in a way that made my chest hurt. But I am lucky Ava, an old friend who does firmware audits now, answered my call at midnight because old friends do that. She looked at what I pulled and said, someone's cloning IDs. She explained it in a way that made it feel like explaining a storm. Signature hashes that didn't match, firmware patches that left back doors wide open, and a vendor contract that read like permission to be sloppy. Sam, the treasurer, a soft-spoken guy who'd been on the board for 3 years, slid me a text from behind his coffee mug. You're right. There's paperwork they didn't show at the last meeting. People kept choosing which side of themselves to be on. We started stacking proof the way a careful person stacks dishes, with care so nothing breaks. Timestamped logs, phone photos of discarded memos, a notarized copy of emails I'd requested, a forensic summary Ava wrote after she pulled memory dumps on vendor hardware. I recorded conversations with a small recorder I happened to carry legal in our state if one person consents, and the tape of Marjorie telling the vendor to make this quiet was thin but there. It was all very boring to explain, and that's the point. Boring is harder to dismiss. Marjorie noticed. She is not subtle. She sent a voicemail that sounded like a legal letter with a human tone, taking out warnings about defamation, hints about trespassing, a promise wrapped in a threat. She called me a meddler. She called Naomi a distraction. The words she used for my involvement, provocation, stuck to me like lint. I felt the urge, in the moment, to be louder, to be harsher. But the thing about systems, and about people who know how to read them, is that righteous anger is a poor forensics tool. So I kept asking for documents. I kept bringing witnesses. Enter Sam in public, because secrets hate light. He stood up in a meeting and read a ledger that hadn't been shared, names circled and dates underlined, and Marjorie smiled like car doors closing. That night, a Detective Ruiz came to our porch with a badge and a patience I hadn't expected. He'd seen enough to open an inquiry. When the badge comes, people who thought they were untouchable notice the floor under their heels change. Act 3 is the public moment, the reckoning that feels cinematic because everyone is finally looking. We presented the evidence at a specially called meeting. I did not expect applause. I did expect the room to tilt between disbelief and relief. I laid out a timeline and let the logs speak because logs are boring, and boring truth is harder to spin into mythology. Sam corroborated. Ava called in on video and explained, calmly, what signature mismatches mean. Naomi sat beside my sister, legs swinging like people do when their hands are empty but their heads are heavy. She drew little ocean waves on a paper napkin, and when Marjorie tried to interrupt, several neighbors, older men who graded lawns like currency, younger moms who lived on coffee and deadlines, raised their hands like the rules were being taught back to her. Marjorie's face changed in a way I will remember. It's the way someone looks at a map and realizes they've been living in the wrong country. There's no dramatic speech, just the thinning of the smile and the small, fast breaths. Someone asked her if she had authorized the copies, and her answer was a taut, corporate thing about community safety. Detective Ruiz asked if she had the authority to bypass regular audit controls, and the room held its breath. She had paperwork, thin and persuasive, but under the weight of the forensic report and the neighbor testimony, it folded like paper. They escorted her out. It was not violent. It was administrative, and there's a kind of satisfaction in administrative consequence. It lands like a verdict that tastes like apple pie because it's ordinary. We didn't torch her career. We exposed the mechanism she hid behind. The HOA suspended her pending review. The vendor lost the contract. The firmware got updated and audited by a third party. The smiles on a few faces were small. Naomi took down the seashell curtain the next day and left the window alone. It was a tiny reclaiming. But here's the part one won't let you leave without. The ending isn't clean. People lined up after the meeting and whispered things that were mean and things that were true. Some neighbors said we did the right thing. Some said we'd set a dangerous precedent that next time anyone can dig into anything and call it oversight. Marjorie, from her porch 3 streets over, mailed a note about due process and asked for an apology. She's right about process and wrong about privacy, and those two things live at odds like siblings in a small house. When I sit on my sister's porch now, Naomi draws and hums, and sometimes sings the chorus of a song she likes, and when she laughs it feels like small weather. Sometimes at night, I'll open the laptop and look at the folder where I kept everything, like a person who keeps their passport in a drawer. Justice, we learned, is a pile of documents and a lot of patience. Protection is not the same as punishment. You can hold both, but it's messy. So I'll leave you with this: a question and a request disguised as a question. What would you have done when someone in a suit reached for a bathroom door and called it an inspection? Do we balance privacy and safety the right way in our communities, or do we hand too much power to people who like the feeling of being in charge? Drop a comment and tell me, were we right to collect the logs and bring the consequences, or did we step over a line? Tell me which side scares you more, an unaccountable person with a key, or an overly watchful community that trades secrets for security. Share this if you think privacy matters. Argue if you have to. I want to see the lines people draw.